I always read comments and look at feedback and stuff. While I was looking at the comments and talking to viewers and friends about the Siphon Filter video, I kept hearing people talk about two things. Metal Gear is better than Siphon Filter, and Splinter Cell is better than Siphon Filter. I can't talk about Metal Gear anymore because I've been told it's unhealthy for my mental state. So this week, we're looking at the interesting development of The Drift, and how it became one of Ubisoft's flagship franchises. Enjoy! It all started back in 1999 when Ubisoft Montreal started work on a third-person shooter called The Drift. The vision for the game was more like James Bond than Sam Fischer. It was a retro sci-fi game with interesting mechanics like different vision modes and modular guns. Development of The Drift was troubled in its early stages because the folks at Ubisoft Montreal hadn't worked on a lot of projects, yet they had incredibly high expectations, perhaps too high for them to achieve. The idea to pitch the project as a James Bond game was made in studio, because the team was quickly losing momentum and they needed to save face. They showed a demo in hopes they could secure funding and support, but it was a total flop. Yannis Malat, I'm probably not saying that right, who later went on to become the CEO of Ubisoft Montreal, said it was a failed attempt to impress the license holder. After the disastrous demo, the project was suspended indefinitely, and the idea of The Drift becoming a Bond game was never mentioned again. Something else was happening during the late 90s that saved the project forever though. In 1996, famous novelist Tom Clancy, Royal Navy Captain Doug Littlejohns, and creative director Steve Reed founded Red Storm Entertainment to develop games based on the Clancy universe. I don't know this for a fact, but I've read one of Clancy's books called Red Storm Rising, and I assume that's what they named the studio after. Red Storm developed Tom Clancy's Politka in 1997 and another game called Dominant Species in 1998. Neither game was amazing, but it got the team off to a good start, and gave them experience for their most successful title, 1998's Rainbow Six. It was the most tactical shooter to have ever been made, and introduced an entirely new way to play shooters to gamers around the world. The success of Rainbow Six allowed the studio to continue developing games like Eagle Watch, and a sequel to R6 called Rogue Spear. In a somewhat surprising turn of events, Red Storm Entertainment was bought out by Ubi in August of 2000. Red Storm marketing manager Wendy Beasley announced that the studio was a wholly owned subsidiary of Ubisoft Entertainment. According to her, it was a mutually strategic plan and logically it was the next step. Either acquire, be acquired, or go public. Buyouts are frequently bad for the studio being bought out, but that wasn't the case with Red Storm. They were excited about the move because they were able to continue to operate independently, and the entire idea was for them to take over some of the titles that Ubi had already been working on. The buyout meant that Tom Clancy left the company, but Red Storm made it clear that they would still be licensing his brand. Alright, now let's move back to The Drift. It had been sitting idle for months, and it appeared to be a dead project. The Red Storm buyout gave it a new opportunity though. Ubisoft was as excited as a kid on Christmas morning to have the rights to the Clancy license, so they immediately went to work trying to find a way to make it happen. They looked through all of their possible projects, and The Drift stood out the most. The designer of the game had still been thinking about the game, and he wanted to put a renewed focus on adding stealth elements to it. For a brief while, Ubi wanted to remake The Drift into a video game adaptation of Clancy's novel, The Sum of All Fears. But after further deliberation, they decided to do something new and just stick Clancy's name on it. They were trying to create a Metal Gear killer, and they knew the Clancy name would give their project immediate recognition and hype. According to Malat, the final pitch was, what if the NSA couldn't collect data by conventional means? Would it have access to a wet works team or an operative to do discreet dirty work? And with that idea, The Drift died, and Splinter Cell rose from its ashes. It was intended to be a rival to Metal Gear Solid 2 and a way for Ubi to create a viable competitor to one of the most successful stealth franchises in the world. The producer of the game later stated that MGS was an inspiration for Splinter Cell, and if you've played both games, that won't come as a surprise. Other people who worked on the project have said the same, as well as admitting that it was influenced by Deus Ex, Thief, and System Shock as well. It's important to point this out, because stealth was still legitimizing itself as a genre when Splinter Cell was made. A couple couple of years ago, I published a video about MGS and how Kojima created a stealth game revolution. Clint Hocking, the game designer and scriptwriter of Splinter Cell, agrees about the importance of MGS. In a 2005 interview, he was asked to describe what he meant when he mentioned Metal Gear as an influence on himself and other people on the Splinter Cell team. He replied that Metal Gear is a stealth action game. Every game that has ever used that idea owes its existence to the success of Metal Gear. Other people have done it better since, in my opinion, and we now have a deeper understanding of the game space that a stealth mechanic can create. But all of us analytical types who understand it now could probably never have conceived it and sold it to a publisher in the first place. Without Metal Gear, there would be no stealth games. So it's not really that I feel we were influenced by it, but rather that we owe the existence of our game to those who were brave enough to take the first step and to open up the new genre for us to create in. Some of the concepts that were later added into the Drift make it pretty obvious that the influence of MGS was a huge part of where it was headed, perhaps even more so than Hocking admits. The modular pistol, one of the only things we can look to from Drift's development, had a couple of things that made it into Splinter Cell's final product. A grappling hook, multiple vision modes, and the ability to shoot cameras are all very similar abilities to the SC20K modular designs that Sam Fischer uses. Sticky cameras, shockers, and all of these various attachments were born out of the Drift's modular pistol. It's all very familiar stuff to anyone who's played the earlier Splinter Cell games. After the decision for Ubisoft Montreal to focus all of their efforts on Sam Fischer, development of the game went rather smoothly. It was finally released in late 2002 and was positively received by gamers and the majority of review outlets. Critics were a fan of the advanced lighting effects, the gadgets, and Fisher's character, thanks in large part to Michael Ironside lending his voice. Unsurprisingly, it was frequently compared to Metal Gear Solid after its release, but it was also praised for doing things that Kojima hadn't, and for adding something new and fresh to the genre. The rest, as they say, is history. 6 more Splinter Cell games were developed, with the last one being published in 2013. Sam Fischer has quite a legacy these days, and Splinter Cell has cemented itself as one of the most successful and entertaining franchises in gaming history. It's been 6 years since we've seen a new one though, and the future of the games is in limbo. The CEO of Ubisoft was asked about the series at E3 in 2017 and said that he couldn't say much about that. But for sure, all the Clancy games are taken care of. It's just we have quite a lot on our plate at the moment. All the Clancy games are really coming along, so we are not forgetting Splinter Cell. He later clarified on Reddit that Ubisoft didn't have anything specific to share at the moment, but teams are working on different things, so stay tuned for more. We didn't hear anything else about it until Ubi's creative director tweeted that the game was in development a few months ago, but Ubisoft brushed it off and said that the director was obviously joking. Nothing about that tweet seems like she was joking to me, so the entire thing is a little bit weird. At this point, I'd assume we'll get another game eventually, but there's no way of knowing when that will be. But let's recap how we've made it to this point. Tom Clancy started Red Storm Entertainment in the late 90s and had a lot of success with Rainbow Six. During that same time period, Ubi had a game called The Drift in development, but it sucked. They failed to pitch it as a James Bond game, and it was shelved. Ubisoft bought Red Storm soon after though, and Ubi wanted to create a Tom Clancy game to compete with Metal Gear. So they used a lot of the work they'd already done on The Drift to develop a new title, slap Clancy's name on it, and Sam Fischer became a legend. While I'll always prefer MGS, kudos to Splinter Cell for helping make stealth games what they are today. I hope you enjoyed the look at the franchise and its roots. If you did, be sure to share it on Reddit, like, subscribe, or don't do any of that. Thanks for watching though, and as always, I'll see you guys on the next one.